Okay, folks, we're going to have to kind of combine a couple of topics. I was going to make a few more videos, maybe even do a live stream, but I was really frozen watching a lot of the Trump press conference on the Hard News Network, which, by the way, I write for. But I do like their broadcasts. It's not like actually working for a news company, but it is a lot of fun. So please check them out, the Hard News Network. And they had the Hard Bastard. He had a live stream where he kind of broke down his press conference and everything. But I do want to get into one of the big possibilities that could be up for the coming year. Of course, following the midterms this November, we're going to combine it a little with a topic that I covered yesterday, which is the fallout from that Jack Smith allegation with Mike.com, which is, or .mike, whatever the hell you call that stupid site. So let's say yesterday we covered the scenario where the Democrats take at least the House, if not both the House and the Senate, which I think they have a distinct chance of winning the House. Let's not rule it out. I do like to keep it at least balanced in terms of analysis, if not in terms of opinion, when I do this these streams and these of course these uploads. But so we dealt with that possibility yesterday. So we're going to deal with the possibility today that the Republicans retain control of the House and the Senate. And what I would like to say is that this opens up a scenario that I call the collapsing castle. Okay, about 2 years ago, when the 2016 election was in full bloom, I talked about something that I called the toxic cocktail, which was really the intersection between hardcore radical left identity politics and a really corrupt corporate establishment in the Democratic Party. So it's almost like you have a high pressure front at the top and the lower pressure front combining. You create like a tornado, something that's unstable. That's what the Democratic Party has been for the past. They've become more and more like this for several decades. There's always been a little more stable element to the Democratic Party, but they're just not winning the day. And those of you that remain Democrats, I like to ask you what is the motivation? What gets you to keep voting for the Democrats? If really the party's kind of going through a really problematic identity crisis, whereas with the GOP, you see that they were able. I mean, you see the evangelical, fringe of the party isn't really in control as many had once feared it would be. You see a bit of a reform there. The GOP still, it needs a lot of work in order to really be considered reformed, and that's why I think that people should consider supporting third parties in many races and supporting third party candidates. But we're going to deal today with the scenario, of course, like I mentioned earlier, that the GOP does retain both houses of Congress, and what its effect will be on the process of, and why do I have this up, this whole article and a couple of other articles behind it? Because of something we'll be talking about a little later, so don't worry about that. So what happens to the president's agenda? There's a few people who will think, oh, this is great. This will lead to, of course, many of his policies being enacted. I say not so fast. Some people, I'm sorry. I hate to be the pessimist, but the fact is that the Republican Party, after the 2016 election, if we're being totally frank, a lot of people thought that they would get a lot of these elements of his platform, especially the wall and repealing Obamacare. They didn't get it. Why didn't they get it? Because of really an actual institutional resistance within the Republican Party. The Republican Party in both houses of Congress has parts of it that are willing to basically throw the anchor down whenever the winds are blowing and the sails are at full mast. if I'm using that metaphor correctly. I'm kind of I've always lived in landlocked the Midwest, by the way. So sorry if I don't get the sailing metaphors correct. So the real issue there, is if you're somebody who believes, oh, we're going to get the wall, we're going to get Obamacare repealed, which for me, Obamacare getting repealed is, I think, the meaning of electing a president that's not Hillary Clinton. So I think Trump has worked hard to reduce the effects of Obamacare. I still think you need to seal the deal forever. I don't know if a GOP Senate and House would be enough to do that, and I'll explain to you why. A lot of people correctly interpreted the failure during the 2017 attempt to repeal Obamacare as a result of some of these quote unquote centrist Republicans, Lisa Murkowski, John McCain, I think it was Sherry Moore Capito of West Virginia, Suzanne Collins, some of these Planned Parenthood Republicans as well, which are Murkowski and Collins. And people are thinking, well, if we get, if you're a GOP person, if we get more seats in the Senate, let's say they get 2 more seats, which is a distinct possibility because I believe out of 33 seats that are up for election, that were supposed to be up for election this year, I think only 7 were defended by the Republicans, the remainder by the Democrats. Yes, there's a distinct advantage there. But first of all, a lot of those seats are in really kind of solid Democratic states. Sorry to tell you guys. For example, I believe one of the races is in Massachusetts, of course, with Elizabeth Warren, the incumbent. She has a distinct advantage over whatever opponent the GOP put up, as well as Shiva Ayyadurai, who I think is a fantastic candidate. But he's going to need a miracle to win there. I think another seat is in California, for example, where there is no Republican running because of their stupid jungle primary system. So it's either going to be Dianne Feinstein or Kevin De Leon. So really, it comes down to whether they can win some of these swing states, which are North Dakota, Indiana, Missouri. I think, there's West Virginia, Montana, and a couple other states could be. I would like to hope Ohio would be a swing state. It doesn't look that way according to polling. And some people are really holding out hope that John James of Michigan would be able to do it. You're going to need a lot of work in order to make that happen. It doesn't just take an overnight change for somebody who's a well-established incumbent to be voted out of the Senate. So who are the Republicans who are likely to get elected to the Senate, or who have kind of a little more of a chance of getting elected? New ones. Well, you would have somebody like Martha McSally of Arizona, who's not that good, and Mitt Romney of Utah, who's a piece of crap. And Mitt Romney's almost assured of winning. And that's really the problem, that we have a process where certain states and certain constituencies allow for just horrible people to just continue to be validated because certain elements of the country really like them. And for those of you that are going to say, oh, well, Trump himself is a horrible element. Look, Donald Trump has been able to prove that he can be marketable to a very diverse cross section of the country. I'm not talking about just racially. I'm saying regionally, Donald Trump has been able to market himself to a lot of different types of Americans. Okay, we're not a country where, for example, the people of Maine, with they probably eat like some sort of chowder. They're completely the same as the culture of Hawaii, for example. It's very different. And I'm not going to say that in every state he succeeded, but this is a person who's he has overachieved according to a lot of these people who, you even see this stupid headline here: 6 wildest moments from Trump's bizarre press conference. Look, people have to understand that this is a person Donald Trump, who has ripped up the entire playbook on how to deal with the press and won basically with flea flicker plays all the way. How are you supposed to explain that? Even if you're not a fan of his, you have to come up with some sort of explanation for that, or otherwise it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so talking about a different issue here. Okay, so we talked about what happens to the Republicans. As for the Democrats, now of course, Trump's agenda itself, at the executive level, we're going to have to see what happens with North Korea and with Mexico and everything else. I think those are the two most important issues: the peace with North Korea, the Obamacare, and getting ratified a new deal with Mexico, and whatever the hell happens with Canada, we don't know. Now, what do we say about the Democratic Party if they lose both houses of Congress? And then, therefore, what happens with the corporate media, and what happens with the so-called lefty alternative media, or the blogosphere, the leftist blogosphere, the Daily Kosses and the Daily Beast and HuffPost and all that crap? Well, you're going to see essentially a bloodbath. And yesterday we discussed it a different version of that. Should they have won one house of Congress? You see, when you manage yourself with goals that not everybody understands, and certain goals that simply aren't clear objectively, the way the Democrats are, because they're not running on a record, they're running on a brand. They're running on certain catchphrases and buzzwords. That's really what they're running for. So once you get into power, or once you lose, people start to point fingers, and that's exactly what happened in 2016. What did they run on in 2016? They ran on love Trump's hate. They ran on I'm with her. They didn't run on a belief system. Bernie Sanders did have a belief system. You have to hand that to him. And they picked somebody. Instead of picking something, they picked nothing. And that's really why the Democrats, as voters, the Democrats as leadership as well, they were a failure, because people understood that they're basically an empty shell. So once this were to fail, let's say it fails this fall, which I'll not even kid myself, I hope happens. The Democratic Party will see possibly a total implosion. The real issue will be how badly the Democratic leadership tries to blame progressives for the defeat. And then you'll see a counter argument from the progressives saying, well, you actually didn't give us anything, and it's your fault because you keep dragging us towards the center and corporatism and big private donors and everything. It's a classic tug of war, because honestly, those two wings of the party, and there's probably other ones among them, they can't be reconciled if you really think about it. If you look at their messages, they cannot be reconciled. Okay, so why do I have this up? You see Chevy Chase fighting with Pete Davidson. This is not exactly a metaphor for what's going on, but it might as it might as well be. Pete Davidson isn't exactly part of the alternative left. He is kind of a Clinton douchebag, to be honest with you. I think he got some sort of stupid Clinton tattoo on his arm. But he's a current SNL star, and he went on Howard Stern and started saying he's a fucking douchebag, fuck Chevy Chase. I hate that dude. He's just a genuinely bad racist person. I don't like him. Fuck him. He's a putz. I don't like him. The response comes on the heels of Chase's own comments about the current cast of SNL, in which he criticized the show's humor, along with its creator and executive producer, Lorne Michaels. I'm amazed that Lorne has gone so low. I had to watch a little of it. I just couldn't fucking believe it, Chase told the Washington Post. That means a whole generation of shitheads laugh at the worst fucking humor in the world. You know what I mean? How could you dare give that generation worse shit than they already have in their lives? It just drives me nuts. Chase was part of the original SNL cast starting in 1975. However, Davidson pointed out he has not landed many roles in recent years, and former coworkers have complained about his behavior in the past. What has he done since '83? Nothing. Davidson said, he had a really big career, but it stopped because everybody realized he's a jerk off. Davidson also came to the defense of Michaels, crediting him with giving Chase a career. It's just disrespectful to Lauren, too, a guy who gave you a career. He said, no matter how big you get, you can't forget what that guy did for you. Other topics of the interview included Davidson's decision to enter rehab in 2016, as well as the details of his relationship with pop star Ariana Grande. SNL is set to premiere its 44th season on September 29th. Why is that important? It's a bit of a rehash of the kind of old versus new argument, and that's the same argument you're having within the DNC. You have somebody, let's put Chevy Chase in the role of somebody like Bill Clinton. Let's put Pete Davidson in the role of somebody like Cortez, Ocasio-Cortez, or there's a variety of other people. You cannot. I mean, first of all, Chevy Chase's comedy, the comedy that built the SNL brand, was very good. It does not resonate with modern America in terms of this millennial generation because people's tastes change, generational tastes change. But for Pete Davidson to claim that Chevy Chase was a douchebag and whatever, and that he didn't do anything important since 1983, he was on a few shows. I'll admit that Chevy Chase isn't exactly my cup of tea, but he has had a number of successes, and some of those successes, to be honest with you, are more impressive than Saturday Night Live in the Pete Davidson era. So you have people who think, well, we're the young generation, it's our turn to call the shots, but you are calling the shots and you suck at it. Okay, Saturday Night Live in that era, I remember there's only one skit that I thought was pretty funny, where I think it was when Mayor de Blasio decriminalized possession of marijuana, and everybody came out of kind of hibernation and everything. It was pretty funny. Can't show it on YouTube because I'll probably get a massive strike because I think it's only allowed to be seen on Hulu or other NBC compatible platforms, NBC licensed platforms. So yeah, that was a great skit, and Pete Davidson was in it, and he didn't have any lines because it was basically just a kind of a physical humor bit, and that's essentially that's the thrust of modern SNL. The less said, the better, and it's the thrust of the Democratic Party. And I really didn't plan on having it go this way, but the more I realize it, the Democratic Party in this era where they've kind of just killed themselves trying to attack Trump instead of trying to actually be about something. That's really, it's you can compare it to Saturday Night Live. You can compare it to many of these shows, and then you have to realize. So we'll get into a few more specifics here because this was incidental that I came upon this story, where everybody by the way is turning on Chevy Chase for some reason, even though, to be honest with you, nobody gives a shit about Chevy Chase. This was from last year when Jordan Sheraton filed a $23.5 million lawsuit against the Young Turks. And then there were, this is also kind of a catalog talking about how, the allegations against him aren't necessarily credible or whatever. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, but in the court of Me Too, in the court of kind of the environment of people who believe in this resistance or whatever, yeah, Jordan Sheridan was already guilty when the first person accused him of sexual assault. I think it said here, it's difficult to prove with the screenshots. No, wait. The allegations revolve around an event that occurred in a hotel room in Flint, Michigan in May 2017. Carly Hammond, the accuser, informed Shadowproof she is considering pressing charges. Sheridan plans to sue the Young Turks and the Intercept for false sexual misconduct allegations. And then they start questioning her. Is it possible Hammond, who is married, made a bad choice that she later regretted? She celebrated a news story in the hotel room and drank beer and had sex with multiple individuals. She went to New York weeks after the alleged assault and stayed with Sheridan. She had consensual sex with him twice. However, she left New York very angry at Sheridan, and by June, she didn't want to speak to Sheridan anymore. Did Hammond consent to? So they're basically trying to impugn the character of a witness, of somebody who claims to have been the victim of a sexual assault. Now, okay, nothing wrong with that if you're living in regular old innocent until proven guilty America, but the progressive leadership has said that that's not the way you deal with victims. So is there a different standard for somebody like Jordan Sheridan, who was eventually fired from the Young Turks apparently for stealing money? Is there a different standard for him and a much higher standard for somebody running for the Supreme Court? Probably there is a different standard for somebody running for the Supreme Court. But the point is that the movement itself, okay, the movement itself, those who have created this feminist maelstrom within the left, they have created this self-devouring creature that's basically dragged people like Sheridan. Their careers are no longer what they were. You have now this moron Jack Smith, who, by the way, is much more of a dumbass than Jordan Sheridan, is now being accused of all sorts of kind of strange things that are not. They don't exactly rise to the level where I think you should be fired. They are a bit humorous. But yeah, he basically gets thrown to the wolves. It says Jezebel spoke with 5 women on the record, each of whom separately contacted Jezebel after forming a sort of whisper network about their experiences with Smith, which date as far back as 2012 and to as recently as June of this year. Their stories are recounted here. All of these women accuse Smith of behavior they variously describe as emotional abuse, manipulation, and gaslighting. 3 of these women say... So look, I don't know if gaslighting can actually be a fireable offense, but they fired him. So what do you want? That is the progressive left as it stands today in the America going into the midterms. And if the midterms turn out not to be very good for the Democrats and their various progressive, I'd say, coat tassels, because they haven't accomplished anything since 2016 that would differentiate themselves sufficiently from the Democrats. If it was to not go well, you would see this literally all the time. First of all, you would see basically this fight among some of the real sheepdoggers on the progressive left to keep the boat afloat and try to keep some of the money coming in from their actual corporate lords. Okay, Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks, who I keep harping on them, they will basically throw some of their more progressive colleagues overboard. They will probably say to Jimmy Dore, "Hey man, get fucked. You're probably the reason we're going to go with for why some of our candidates did not do as well as we wanted them to, or maybe they're going to be used as a scapegoat for why the party didn't perform very well." So, they're going to kick Jimmy Dore and, his sidekicks, Steph and Ron, to the curb. And it is unfortunate. I'm not trying to be humorous about it. I think, by the way, Ron Placone, who is on Jimmy Dore, I think he's pretty funny. I think he is. Even though he's, politically very different from me. I think he is funny. And that's I think, something that I can be honest about. Now, and also, I think once in a while they have pretty good guests. So, yeah, it's going to be something that it'll be very evident. A lot of the progressives are simply going to abandon the traditional progressive media, which would include TYT. And it's already, by the way, a lot of those people, they don't read the Daily Beast anymore. They don't read Daily Kos. They don't read Salon. They won't read Huffington Post anymore. Not regularly anyway, because that break already started in 2016, and it can't necessarily be mended. And then you're going to be creating kind of this leaderless movement of progressives who have been basically completely disillusioned by the Democratic Party. It's already begun, by the way, but you're just going to get more of them because the party will have failed conclusively. They can no longer point at the Russian bot issue, by the way, because people will get tired of the same excuses. It's the same issue every time, and the Democrats don't. First of all, when the leadership itself has no credibility, when the leadership has no ideas, people start to really seek actual reasons or to make up other delusions that kind of suit their own vendettas against the party leadership. So, that's as far as the alternative media on the progressive side is concerned. We didn't deal with the corporate media yet. We'll talk about that very briefly here. Okay? The corporate media, the CNNs and the MSNBCs, and we'll throw in, Fox News in many respects is also part of this as well. They are going to have a major problem following the 2018 midterms if this outcome happens, if the Republicans take the House and the Senate. Of course, again, for those of you that object, I went over the other scenario yesterday. So I'm not ruling out the possibility of the Republicans losing one or both houses. This is, let's say, what I call the collapsing castle theory, okay? Because all of these institutions, the DNC, the alternative lefty media, as well as the mainstream media, you're going to see a lot of upheaval. You're going to see some institutions survive. I don't think the Washington Post is going to fold. I don't think that the New York Times is going to fold necessarily very quickly. But there's going to be a lot of consolidation, and all of this stuff we see here where Jezebel is going after Jack Smith, and you have some of these people, nipping at the heels of Jordan Sheraton, who really wasn't that big of a fish anyway. Those things are going to be very common because why? Why would they attack their own people? Because the audience is going to be smaller because less people are going to care. People had a magnified interest in politics going into 2016 because it was an amazing spectacle. And now people are going to start to lose interest if the status quo remains because the plot will kind of be not as interesting and the characters won't be as compelling. Okay, yeah, still the most compelling character would be Donald Trump. Everybody else by that point in this scenario, would be a failure. Bernie Sanders would be a failure because most of his candidates, did not succeed in winning party nominations at the Democratic Party, and he'll still be considered an outsider. And he's already going to be kind of well beyond his years. Already is well beyond his years at this point. You're going to see Elizabeth Warren. Is she going to run for president having just won re-election and with everybody doubting her ancestry? And then you're going to have all these other weirdos like Michael Bloomberg and Mark Cuban trying to say, oh, we're going to be the anti-Trump billionaire. No, people are not going to be as interested because they're tired of this whole Trump 24/7 show. And some of us are tired of it too. It's not exactly invigorating to have to look at this stuff every single day. It might actually be a motivation for some people to go out and vote for something that'll bring a little more tranquility to the country's climate. And I don't know if that'll happen, but we'll see. I don't think I can predict everything that'll happen. But anyway, please like this video, share the video, subscribe to this channel, subscribe to Razor Ray Live Wounds, which I'm not sure when the next live stream will be, but pay attention. And also comment when it uploads, and I'll see you guys later. Have a happy Thursday.